Hi there, and welcome to the Curious Collective podcast, conversations designed for the veteran and first responder community to bring awareness to those holistic practices that help us live our best life. So tap into the wisdom and knowledge of our guests to heal, transform, and live as your true soulful self. Listeners, welcome to episode 101. With us today, we have the amazing Gareth Goodsir. Now, before I let him speak, I just need to introduce how we actually met. It's a little bit different this time. We're actually second cousins by marriage, and we didn't know that until we met up in Darwin back in the early 2000s when we were both in the military together, which I'm sure Gareth will talk a bit more into. But I have gotten along with him since the moment I met him, and I've watched him grow and evolve and do the amazing work that he does in the world. So, thank you so much, Gareth, for being here. Can you please introduce yourself to the listeners and what it is that you're doing in the world right now?
Awesome. Thanks, Katie. It's quite the intro. Yeah. Second cousins is probably just the easiest way to say that we're somehow related some way, somehow. So I love it. Um, a little bit of background about what I do and how I help people. I'm a high performance coach with a background in neuro-linguistic programming and hypnotherapy. So I kind of work with people on two levels. Sometimes people will want to get an instant breakthrough, whether it be something like quitting smoking in one session. That's something I attack with hypnotherapy. And I also work with people doing high performance coaching. So people that are stressed out, that are like burning themselves out. And I basically work with them to be able to help them release the stress and the anxiety that I have built up, typically from people in the corporate world,
Mm.
to be able to release that and then build confidence, resilience, and mental toughness to be able to become their best selves, and ultimately improve their lives and achieve their goals.
Yeah, awesome. Now, I heard you say that you're working in the corporate world. Now, what I've observed with high performance military first responder people is they'll be the best that they are within their job in military, and then they'll get out of defense, transition into civilian life, and they'll be like still chasing and attaining and seeking goals outside. So usually go into middle management, COO type corporate roles, and the go do. The stress they probably had in defense that they were trying to escape by transitioning, it just follows them into this next corporate world. So are they the sort of people that you love working with?
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of people that sort of are following like those types of patterns, is a lot of the time it's unconscious because, people get caught up in a certain, lifestyle of like go, 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 achieve, achieve, achieve. And so often they're chasing that pattern, but they're not realizing they're unconsciously burning themselves into the ground. And a lot of the time for people that are in the veteran community, they think, oh, you know what, like I'm done with defense. I've done this. I'm over it. I want something else. But then unconsciously they run a similar pattern by getting out of defense and then running that pattern then in the corporate world. So one of the things that I think is really important to be able to help people is to be able to get clear and specific about what they want, because
Mm,
the old cliche of like wherever you go there you are. So if you're
mm,
all right, yeah, I want to achieve. Well, it's like, okay, what specifically do you want to achieve? What's your outcome? What do you want to get from that? And
mm.
what are the feelings that you want to get from that? Because a lot of the time, we can shoot ourselves in the foot by just chasing the carrot that's dangling in front of us, unfortunately.
And you know what? Even as you say that, I sit here and think it to me is really such a simple concept. But I have had so many conversations with, veterans or first responders where I've asked that simple question and they just haven't known.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
why do you think people get to this point of being on the carousel where they're doing and going and achieving and pushing, but not actually knowing why they're doing it? Why do you think people do that?
I think it's like I mentioned before, it's the pattern, and it gets harder as you get older because if you've got a family, you've got people that you need to look after, you need to provide for financially, you need to
Mm,
protect. So it's not just like you're in your own little bubble, just like, oh, what do I want? You have to think more broadly, think about your family. And a lot of people are doing things where they're burning themselves into the ground. And I think in the back of their mind, they're like, well, I need to be providing, I need to be doing this. And so they're doing it, and they're doing it for these good reasons, but they haven't taken the time to give themselves the grace to be able to go, okay, what do I want, and how can I go about getting this outcome whilst being able to provide for my family? Because I think that's a big one, particularly for guys. You know, I mean, it's obviously a thing for women as well, but a lot of guys really get that mentality of go go go, and yeah, they're burning themselves into the ground. And one of the things that I've noticed now that I've kind of brought sex into into the equation, I've noticed a lot of women seem to have the wake up call a lot before a lot of the times before men do. A lot of women will be doing something and they'll be like, hold on, like, what am I doing? I'm not enjoying this. This isn't going where I want it to go. And then a lot of the time I'll end up working with women that have those realizations, whereas men just kind of sort of like go, 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 and they just stay in that pattern and they keep themselves stuck. So I'm not sure if that really answered your
Yeah.
question, but
Well,
I
they
think
might actually have those thoughts, but then it's like self-sacrificing patterns where it's like, well, I feel that way, but I need to do this. Yeah.
yes.
And does that then link back to the work you do in the NLP hypnosis space where there's always like a core belief at the bottom of it all, at the roots of it all? What do you think some of those main core beliefs are that keep people stuck in these patterns?
Well, I mean, I mean, I've been making a lot of generalizations here, but a lot of people are running, they're running different patterns. So, you know, what causes somebody stress or anxiety could be completely different from somebody else. I mean, we both know people that have, you know, been overseas and have had to endure horrific things, and they come back and they're not the same. Conversely, you can have other people endured a lot worse and they come back and they're functioning
Mm,
completely fine. And a lot of that has to do with their coping mechanisms, their coping strategies, how they speak to themselves, the meaning that they give what's happened and what's transpired. So a lot of it is really individualistic, and also a lot of it is patterns. So so for example, I'm going to take a really rogue analogy here. Let's say somebody's smoking a cigarette and they think, "Oh, I want to quit and I need to quit, but I don't know." And they're on the fence about it. But one day something happens, you know, maybe the little boy or the little girl comes up to them and says, "You know, Dad, I don't want you to smoke anymore. Um,
mm,
I want you to be there when I'm old. I don't want you to die." And they're like, "I'm not going to die. I'm just having a couple of cigarettes or whatever it is." And in that moment, they just go, boom. They're like, "Holy shit, I'm really having a negative impact here." And then it's in those moments, they create change because the emotion shifted from, "Oh, I probably shouldn't do this," to like, "Oh my goodness, I'm letting down my son. I'm letting down my daughter, or whatever it is."
mm,
And in that moment, they reach a threshold. And when somebody reaches a threshold, they will completely change in that instant. You know, a lot of people will go to therapy for 5, 10, 15, 20 years and not change because they're just talking about it. They're not getting to a threshold. Whereas when I work with somebody, I'm I'm really getting them to be able to like get onto that ledge of being able to create change. So for
mm,
example, for somebody to be able to create change, they need to be able to say something must change. It must change now, and it must be me that changes it right now.
oh, empowering.
So those are the three keys for change. Something must change. I must change it. I must change it now. And so if you imagine getting that type of leverage, if I'm talking to somebody about quitting smoking, I'm saying, "Oh, you know, why do you want to quit smoking?" And they're like, "Oh, it costs me money. It's not good for my health, and my wife doesn't really like it." And they're just hemming and hawing. Like, it's going to be hard if I'm trying to get that person, if I'm going to create a strange metaphor here, there's like a brick wall and I'm trying to push them up on top of that brick wall to then jump over the fence to then change. But if I can get them to that point where they're like standing on the edge and all I need to do is just give them a little push in the back and they're going to go over that wall and
Mm,
change, that's where the power lies. So the power lies in
Mm.
being able to create leverage to be able to get to that threshold and then create the change. And so I did mention me helping somebody create change, whether it be with NLP, hypnosis, high performance coaching, or whatever. But that person is putting in the work. They're
Yeah.
not just him hiring through it, going, "Oh well, yeah, I want to change." They're like, "No, I need to change now. It's cost
Yeah.
me too much financially. It's cost me too much with my health. I see the way my children look at me, and I just know that I need to be able to do better, and I want to change right now." And you see that
Mm.
type of conviction in somebody, and then you turn it up, like ratchet it up a bit more, and then boom, and
Yeah, I
then
love that analogy of ratcheting it up.
yeah. Well, sometimes you got to create more pain, but then you can also not only create the pain, then you can create the pleasure as well. And you're like,
Yeah.
how good will it feel to be able to know that you're breathing clean, fresh air, to be able to know that you're being an inspiration to your children, and people around you will see that you
Mm.
create a positive change. It means that they can create a positive change. So then the change becomes something beyond themselves, because a lot of people will do more for others than they will do for themselves. And so
Mm.
when you start to build in those components and they can see like a greater vision beyond themselves, that also really inspires people as well.
Heck to the yes. So what I'm seeing there is to reach that empowering point where you're going to lean in, where you're going to create change, where you can ratchet it up. You need to have someone that's sort of going to help you to see it and give you clarity. And what I was hearing from you before was if you've got too many moving parts in your life, like if you're working a high stress job, you're maybe studying, you've got three kids, you've got a wife who's a bit disgruntled because you're not even at home, is like you need that point of clarity where you're going to just choose perhaps one thing to work on to start with, or you can't change it all at once. So you able to talk into that, like if people are like,
Yeah. Well, what you're speaking about sounds a lot like overwhelm, right? People get overwhelmed when they have too many things to do, and a simple, like, I mean, like a lot of things are always easier to talk about and they're harder to execute in
mm,
reality. But I was having a conversation with a friend the other day, and we were talking about overwhelm, and I was like, that everybody has a lot of moving pieces in their life, but if you were to break it down, there's really only three categories that we have in life. We have health, wealth, and relationships. If
mm,
you were to take those things that are like really overwhelming, like the example you gave there, somebody that's got like a high pressure job, they got kids and they're studying, like there's a lot of stuff going on there. And I don't presume to say that this is going to make it all easy, but if you could look at all those, those different moving parts and go, okay, this relates to wealth because this is going to build prosperity for myself and my family. Okay, that's like the studying and the job. Okay, the kids and my wife, their relationships. So you go from taking a handful of different things and you chunk them into separate buckets. So
mm,
I think that can be a useful way to be able to help reduce overwhelm. So you go, okay, I've got my three baskets: health, wealth, relationships. And
mm.
speaking of those three baskets, one of the things that, I mean, you'd be able to speak into this with your background. So many people sacrifice their health on the altar of just like getting things done, just trying to
Mm.
produce a result. And it's like once your health goes, like nothing else even matters. So
Yes.
you need to really prioritize that, because I heard this this quote the other day when they said, when your life's busy, you've got 1,000 problems, but when your health goes, you only have one problem. All those
Mm.
other things fade off. If you don't have your health, you have nothing. So
100%. And listeners rewind and listen to that part again, because I feel as well like health actually and wealth go hand in hand. Like if you're not looking after your health, you can't create wealth. You can't bring it in. Your life is going to block that, and then you're forever just pushing against that wall. But I think as well, like with the work that I do, and I'd love to talk just a little bit into it so you can expand on yours, is if you can't have health, then your nervous system is dysregulated, your hormones are out of balance, and all of everything starts to dysfunction. So if you're wanting to be productive in the outside world, you don't actually have the capacity to hold that. And I've seen through the veteran first responder space is they only realize that when the bus hits them. when, the injuries get too much that they can't function within their job, or, they get a horrible imbalance within the body that is like the big C word or something like that, where it's like, I need to do something about it now. But perhaps if they'd have started or done little things beforehand that could help them to this, they'd be able to have more capacity.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's unfortunately part of the human condition. We don't appreciate what we have until it's gone. But
Mm.
that kind of speaks into what I was talking about before with threshold. It's like, oh, it's a bit, my legs are a bit tight. Oh, it is what it is. But then when you start like cramping up severely, or you like, something bad happens and you need to address it straight away, you go from it being a should, or something I should probably do, to a must. You
Mm.
need to be able to address that straight away because you've gone to threshold. So that's kind of going full circle back to what I was
Yeah,
talking
I
about.
do like that concept of threshold, actually. That's really good. And there's one more thing I'd like to talk about before we hear a little bit about your story, which is that you mentioned inner dialogue. I'd love you to talk more about that with the work you've done with people, or what you've noticed within that sort of high functioning community about that inner resourcing, inner dialogue. Do you think people are too in their heads?
Well, yes. I think we're all sort of guilty to a certain extent, because we do have to acknowledge that we have a negativity bias that's built into us that, has kept us safe for a very long time as a human race. However, it's one thing to be able to, be mindful of something. It's another to indulge it. So a simple thing that I like to remind people of is, if something negative comes up, don't like pretend that it's not there, or just think positive.
Doesn't
Everything,
work.
just think positive, because the other party in mind will be like, bullshit.
Mm,
You're just sweeping this under the rug.
mm,
So something that I like to share with clients is, it's a little bit metaphorical. So if you would imagine, and I guess your listeners would be aware of this phenomena. We've got a conscious mind, which is here having this conversation that we're having together. But then we also have an unconscious mind, or some people like to refer to it as a subconscious mind. It's all the same thing.
mm,
Your unconscious mind is doing all the things that you're not aware of. So you're not aware of the types of breaths that you were taking, unless you're maybe doing breath work. You might not be aware of how the chair feels that you're sitting on until
mm,
that up. So all that was always there in the unconscious part of the mind. And so the conscious part of your mind almost acts like it's the captain. It's the captain of the ship. It's like, okay, you know what? Today I'm going to do this podcast with Katie. Then I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. Okay, that's my conscious mind. But then my unconscious mind is like running stuff in the background. And so if you could imagine that you're the captain of this ship, and you are making a voyage, and you're going from Australia to New Zealand, and you're making this trip. And as you're making this trip, you don't have the state of the art GPS equipment. You're going old school. You have somebody that's a navigator, and their whole outcome is to be able to like navigate off the stars, and like use these instruments of yesteryear. And so that navigational device can be used to, when you go off track, to pull you back on track. And so a way that you can use this navigational device is, if you find yourself starting to get off track, or you start finding yourself getting like disgruntled or frustrated, and you start thinking to yourself like, oh man, I've got so much to do today. I don't think I can get through it, or whatever. You start like having that
mm,
conversation. Instead of like pretending that didn't come up, you then sort of like go to the other side, and you then talk to yourself in a way that shifts that thought process. So for example, if you go, I've got so much to do today, but then another part of your mind says, and you're resourceful and you can do it. And then you go, it
mm,
like pulls you back on track. And so I've started doing this thing where I call it less and more. So if I'm getting frustrated, my dog's being a menace, and I'm like getting frustrated with him, I might say to myself, less frustration, more calm.
mm.
It's it sounds kind of idiotic if you haven't really done it before, but I've really gotten to a pattern of pulling myself up on it. And
Mm.
so, if I'm getting frustrated, I'll say less frustration, more calm. And then or it might be the other way. I might be like, you know, more cool, less stressed. And
Mm.
it's just like little prompts, and it's your unconscious mind is giving you these words, and these resources were always there, but it just starts to speak up when you step into it. It's yeah, I'm not sure if
I
my
really like it. I really like it.
that made sense.
It did. It absolutely did. I like it because it's you having that inner dialogue or conversation with yourself. I mean, we often, seek the answers outside of ourselves, but a lot of them are actually already within us. And if we can be aware, which is what I'm hearing when you say the less and more thing, is that drop of awareness is we can actually start to create a better dialogue within our own bodies.
Yeah,
Mm.
absolutely. And then to bring it back to that metaphor, it's like, you're navigating your path, but you're sort of like you're getting a bit off, like off the track, and you go, no, no, hey, you can do it. You've
Yeah.
got more resources than you realize. You're strong and you're powerful, and it's
Yeah,
and
yeah,
up to yourself.
absolutely.
So,
I
yeah.
don't see why that wouldn't work at all. I love it a lot. I often catch myself saying something and I will tell myself that's interesting, and I'll
Yeah,
like put a little pin in it and come back and go, well, why was I thinking that? And have a little self-reflect on it.
yeah, well, that's a really good one too. Like even you go to yourself, isn't that interesting?
Mm.
That's a pattern interrupt because
Yeah.
you're like running a pattern of like, oh, like think something negative, and then as that thought loop's going, and then you kind of like you're catching yourself and you're going, isn't that interesting? It just throws a wrench in the pattern,
Mm.
and then you go, huh, interesting. It shifts it, and then you move on to something better. So that's a really good technique that you've created yourself
Yeah.
unconsciously.
I love
Powerful.
it. So I watch your Instagram and I love your little inspo videos that you've been putting up. So you haven't always been doing this work that you're doing. I'd love to hear how you got to be doing this work you're doing. Like, what is your story?
So it's a, if we go way back, so it sort of like makes sense in the grand scale of things. Growing up, I was actually born in Africa. And my parents moved here when I was like 6 months old, and I grew up in the rough lands of Logan, but I was always obsessed. I was always obsessed with surfing, or more specifically bodyboarding. And so as a teenager, my friends and I would always try to hassle our parents to get us to the coast, or we'd start catching buses and getting to the beach to be able to surf. And then as soon as I finished high school, myself and a couple of my friends moved down the coast, and we're just a couple of blocks back from the beach. And I ended up working this job scrubbing dishes in a Chinese restaurant, so I could surf during the day and then scrub dishes at night. And this one night, I was riding my bike through the back streets of Main Beach, and I was looking around, and I was looking at all these like amazing properties, and I was thinking, man, like I'm such a fucking loser. I'm like scrubbing dishes, like what am I doing? I need to do something with my life. And I remember getting home. And I was just in sort of like this deep sort of like thought pattern of like needing to do something with my life. And I got home and I was talking to one of my friends that I live with, and 9/11 was happening on the TV. It was sort of like the planes
Mm.
flying to the buildings and all this. And I remember thinking, whoa, like this is crazy. Like we're going to be going to a war. Like, and I had all these like crazy things running through my head. And next thing I knew, I was ended up joining the army because I thought that was like the right thing to do. And I had this plan in my mind that I'd be able to get posted to Brisbane, and then I could like come down the coast on the weekend. And yeah, I had this like whole sort of like plan mapped out in my mind. Long story short, didn't happen. I ended up getting posted to Darwin, but
Where you can't swim at the beach.
well, the craziest thing about it was I hatched because I hatched this plan when I was sitting on the bus on the way to Kapuka, and I was talking to this guy, And he goes, "Oh, what corps are you going into, man?" And I was like, "Oh, artillery, but I don't really care about that. I just need to get a posting to Brisbane." And he goes, "Oh, you know how you can get a posting to Brisbane?" I was like, "What do you mean?" And he goes, "Well, there's these like 3 awards, and if you win like one of these awards, there's a good chance you can get like these postings. It's like looked at in this really high regard." And I was like, "What, really?" And I'm like, "What are these awards?" And he's like, "Best shot." And I'm like, "Well, I've never shot a gun. That's not going to be me." And they're like, best soldier. I'm like, "Well, that's not going to be me. I talk a lot of shit. I'm probably going to get in trouble." And they're like, "Well, the best at PT." And I like looked around the bus and I'm like, "I can push myself harder and faster than anybody else. I'll get that award, and then I'll get that posting." And so I did. I did, and I got that award, and I was like, "I'm on my way." And then they said, "No, you're going to Darwin." And my plans completely scuttlebutted. And the reason why I'm telling this like this long-winded story is because when I was in Darwin, I absolutely friggin' hated it. I just hated how hot it was. I hated how I couldn't surf. I hated how I couldn't be able to, I was,
I remember.
oh yeah, I was filthy. I absolutely hated it. And then in that moment of frustration, I picked up this book by Tony Robbins called Awaken the Giant Within. And I thought it was such a fascinating way to be able to change the way that you think. So, he's talking about if you change the way you look at things, you change the meaning, you change the way that you feel. And I was like, well, that's really interesting. And so I initially got interested in personal development through through that book of Tony Robbins, Awaken the Giant Within. And then when I actually went to get out the army, I was like, what am I going to do with myself? And I was like, I was interested in personal development, and I'd heard about life coaching, and I thought, oh, that's pretty interesting. I'm like, maybe that's something I could get into. And so I started doing this life coaching course going way back, like it's almost like 20 years ago. And it was interesting, but it wasn't enough. Like learning these things, it was basically like help people set goals and go for it. And I'm like, well,
Bleh.
nice, but like, what's that going to do for
Yeah.
somebody? And so, and then I'd obviously learned a bit about NLP through because of Tony, and then also they were talking about it in this life coaching course. So I learned about NLP. I became a practitioner, then a master practitioner, and then learned more about hypnosis. And I heard about a guy in Sydney that was helping people stop smoking in one session using hypnosis, and I went, "Well, that's pretty interesting." My dad's a smoker, and I'm like, "No, I could probably learn that. That
Yeah.
could be helpful." And then I ended up learning that skill set, and so I started helping people quit smoking in one session. And as I've got a background in jiu-jitsu, I ended up working with a few MMA fighters, and so I started to build a little bit of momentum. But I I'd be busy and I'd see people, and then I wouldn't see people, and then I was like, oh, just getting really frustrated. And so I
Mm.
had a friend that worked at the airport, and he was like, "Dude, I can get you a job there, and you can work there, and you can kind of do like a side hustle thing." And I was like, "Yeah, cool." And then so I ended up getting doing that. And then just a few years ago, something really really like hectic happened. I had this one day where the one day my dad died. I got my divorce papers the same day, and I just remember thinking to myself, like, what the fuck? Like, and in that moment, I was like, I need to get serious about what I want to do, and where I want to go. And that was like about a year and a half ago. And so since then, I felt like I've really got a lot more clarity about what I want to do, where I want to go. And so I've kind of just been going after it.
Mm.
So yeah, bit of a long-winded
That was
backstory.
your threshold, hey?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So
As you shared that, I just felt it through my whole body. I can see how much of a cumulative day that was for you, where you were brought to this everything just too much, too hard, too fast, and then that like plateauing out. So, how did you, after that massive event, like what little first steps from what you already knew did you implement for yourself to get you through?
well, I don't know where this came from, or if I heard it. I'm pretty sure I didn't come up with this, but for some reason, I just heard in my mind this saying, "Get bitter or get better."
Oh, I love it.
I yeah, well, I haven't drank alcohol in about, I think, maybe 13, 14 years. And I remember that day I was thinking, oh man, I should just like ride my bike to the casino and then just like get on it. Like it
Mm,
was going to, but it just sort of like popped into my head, and I
yeah.
was like, nobody would judge you for that. And I was like, yeah, but I'm going to judge myself. I'm like, I'm giving myself an excuse to go and do some like something that it's not in alignment with what I do or what I want, and I'm going to use that as an excuse. And I'm like, no. And and then I was like, well, I can use this as a reason or an excuse or a justification to feel sorry for myself, and then say, oh well, this year's been shit because this happened to me, and tell this whole story. Or I could be like, what do I want? Like, what do I want to do? Where do I want to go? Like, get better. And I had this dream since I was a teenager. I've always wanted to go to Mexico, to go to this place. It's down in the south. It's called Puerto Escondido. It's just like it's this crazy wave. It's like breaks right on the beach. It's insane. And I'd always wanted to go there. And then I was like, I'm going there. Like
Yes.
I've talked about it. I've wanted to do it. I've just like I just never did anything about it. So I went. So I went to I went to I went to Mexico. I went surfing, and then I came back and I was like, all right, okay, so let's get clear about what you want to do. You say that this is the conversations I'm having with you.
Mm,
Say that you want to help people. Are you going to help people? All right, let's start getting a bit more focused. And yeah, so it was just I think it was that matter of like reaching the threshold, because most of us know intuitively what we need to do.
yeah.
We give ourselves ways out, and we like oh, we use these like softeners on ourselves. We're like, oh, I'm a little bit overweight, or I could probably, and it's like, no,
Mm,
that's not going to move you. When you like, when you look at yourself in the mirror and go, nah, you're fucking fat. You need to
mm,
change. Like that's when you go, okay, and it's like
yeah.
that's when you create the momentum and push yourself to get to that threshold. So a lot of it has to do with getting a threshold, and either we choose it or life imposes it upon us, like we were saying
Mm.
earlier with like the injuries or whatever, So it's the problem is that human nature is we sometimes we need to get hit over the head a few times to learn the lesson.
And what I love about what you just shared there is you're so self-aware, and everything that you just shared is that you always sort of catch yourself at that point of, going to do something perhaps is out of alignment, like you going to the casino and getting on it. So, if for the listeners that would like to be more self-aware, do you have any tips or tricks that they could tap into?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things I would say that I mentioned earlier is get get clear about what you want. And a lot of the times, sometimes, well, not a lot of times, but sometimes I'll ask that to somebody. I'll say, "What do you want?" And they'll tell me what they don't want. So, well,
Mm,
I don't want to smoke. I don't want to drink. I don't want to be fat. I don't blah 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 blah. And it's like, well, okay, you saying that you don't want that. What do you want? But if they're really caught in a negative cycle, instead of trying to break it, you can step into it and go, okay, where will that take you if you go down that path?
mm.
Where will that
Powerful
take?
question.
Yeah. So so let's take the example of I keep going back to smoking, but it's something I've had a lot of experience with is okay, where's that going to take you in 5, 10, 15, 20 years? And not just like think about it intellectually, go, oh yeah, I'll probably be sick with cancer. Like
Mm,
let's really step into it and think about what that's going to look like. Notice how your body would feel. Notice how you would hear people talking about you wasting your health and wasting your potential, and think about how you would talk to yourself, knowing that you didn't follow through on your potential. And think about how much you've left behind because of your laziness of just
mm,
sticking with a habit that didn't suit you. So go into it and feel it. And you can do this for both the positive and the negative, and then float, like just in your own mind, just daydream, where will this course of action take me if I extrapolate it out over 5, 10, 15,
mm.
20, and really like step into it, really feel it and notice like what comes up. And that stirs people emotionally, because
Yeah.
we don't logic doesn't move us. It's emotion that moves us. It's not
Mm.
logic. I mean, you think about when you do something dumb that you regret, you always go, oh, it's like your emotion went up and your logic went down.
Yeah.
you can know these things, but it's part of the human condition. You get caught up and do things that, you're like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have said that.
Yeah. And
Oh,
like people aren't used to sitting in the discomfort of things. So when you first start to do it, it's, but it's actually gonna shift you. And if you want that, like do it.
yeah, but see that's a problem now. It's so easy to distract ourselves.
Yeah.
Grab your phone, grab something to drink, grab something to eat, and then just like distract yourself and numb yourself, as
Mm,
opposed to like face what it is head on. And 9 times out of 10, when you actually do it, it's not as bad as what you made it out to be in your mind anyway. So
yeah.
that's what I would suggest, to step into it, stir up the emotion, and then get yourself to be able to take action.
Yeah, because emotion is just energy in motion. It's just shifting
Exactly right.
what's within your body. So, if our listeners were wanting to learn more about, say, high performance coaching, NLP, hypnosis, any of the magic that you give to this world, and they're peeping in the door and they're curious, but they're just not sure, what advice would you have for them?
They're not sure about what they want, or they're not sure like what
Not
steps.
sure if they should try it or not. They're like, oh, sounds a bit, oh, don't know.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I would say if they have questions, reach out to me on Instagram. I'm Gareth K Goodsir, Goodsir, and just hit me with some questions, and I might be able to point you in the right direction, maybe give you some ideas, or maybe get you to look at something a bit differently, or go to my website, garethgoodsir.com. But Instagram's probably the easiest way for me to be able to connect, to be able to help people out if
And there's
they.
some really great reels there too, if you just want to check out some of those to start with, just to get a bit of an idea. I love how you drop your little nuggets of wisdom out. Do you put them up as you feel inspired to share things, or are they from when you've worked with people and you're like, I could help everyone with this tidbit?
Yeah, I guess it's a little bit of a combination. Sometimes I'll just think of something and I'll be like, oh, maybe I'll just rant on the internet about this. I'll just,
Yes, more ranting.
yeah, just start recording myself. And then other times there'll be something where I'll be like, oh, that could be useful. So
Yeah.
it's a bit of a mixed bag.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think the work you're doing in the world is absolutely amazing. Keep shining bright, keep ticking boxes and kicking goals. And maybe you can come back on here in the future, and we'll talk into something a little bit deeper and more like one topic. Would you be open to that?
Oh, I'd love to, Katie. Yeah, that'd be awesome. Hit me up
Awesome.
anytime.
So thank you, Gareth, for joining us today, and thank you, listeners. Before we part ways, is there any final words you've got for our listeners?
One thing I would say that I'd like to remind people of is that all of us have a lot more potential than we realize within inside of ourselves. We're a lot more powerful than we realize. It's just sometimes we get caught in patterns, whether it be a pattern of frustration, a pattern of a habit that we're not proud of.
Mm.
That it's like you're not that thing. You're so much bigger than that thing, and you can change it. A lot of the things that keep us caught up are simply decisions, and you can choose to make a different decision, and in turn create a different destiny.
Heck yes. Katie out.